really interesting odor problems. That's kind of her style.
Jerry and all that.
Yes. She's probably one of the longest standing COs there is out there.
After the founders.
Yeah. So it was an interesting flow. They decided to go with a flow where they did 2 rooms, which was definitely common and will add to people's nerves. Dog guy was a bloodhound, and this is his second attempt at it. So he is funny about it going into new interiors. He's a very big dog, and he's very wimpy. I think the first time we brought him home for boarding, it took us like half an hour to just get him into the house from outside. He was happy outside. It's just coming in the house was scary for him. He was a little funny about the interior at first. Didn't want to go down the small hallway that by the time we're coming back, which is so strange for me. I never get 30-second warnings. But with Zeus, I get 30-second warnings all the time because those 2 left had the distinct
any part or object.
Yep, absolutely.
It looks like we're having some difficulty with video and audio. I think we were having a connection issue a minute ago. Hopefully it's working.
So the search to the wall.
What kind of container? What's it in?
I missed it.
Out there.
All different kinds. Yeah. It was I went to the next room, found 1 hide on a chair, and left. And I found out later that we were correct. That second room with the 1 hide, a lot of people had dogs just like mine who showed interest against one of the walls, which is strange. On a cooler day, there was a lot of pooling odor. Maybe the heaters were on inside. I don't know. And a blank room, which I haven't seen a blank room in a trial in a long time. So I was very happy to have that.
Yeah, they're fun.
Wasn't hard for Zeus because he doesn't really false, like I said. And then the last search of the day was the vehicle search. The vehicles were 3 cars, 3 minutes. Which all of the other time limits, it was 2.5 for everything except for the blank interior, which was 1.5 minutes. So having 3 minutes on the vehicles, I was thinking maybe there would be 3 hides. But we went around, we found a hide on a license plate, showed some interest on another car, and left. We found out we left a hide behind. And 7% pass rate, and a lot of people missed the one that I missed as well. So
did you see any interest there, or was that completely weird to you?
Saw interest there. Probably took him past it like 6 or 7 times. He didn't commit to it. I'm looking forward to seeing the video because maybe I didn't take him past the part he needed to go past. But man, he showed interest, and then when I brought him back, he did not want to show any interest after that.
Was it windy?
Nope, not particularly. So maybe that was the problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very, very happy with Zeus's performance. He's an awesome young dog. He's got a good future ahead of him, I'm sure. I was excited to have one more chance to trial with him before we move out of California. Hopefully we'll be able to trial more.
Yeah, Charlotte wants to take a vacation our direction.
Yeah, for sure. It was an interesting trial. If you have questions about it, let us know. One thing I wanted to say is it had a low pass rate. There were only 2 titles at the end of the day, which I was a little surprised about because I actually felt like the trial was quite doable. Like I felt very good with how my dog did. The hides that my dog missed, I was not surprised that he missed those. The vehicle, my dog showed interest in an area and I couldn't get him to nail anything down, so I left. But I left thinking if there was a hide there, I would totally not be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
And our mic is making a weird
strange
sound.
Feedback.
I wonder if you guys are hearing that too. Oh, it's your phone, I think, is interfering with these wires. Yeah. And then the container search, I couldn't get him to work. So he found the 1 hide and he just kept going back to it. So I'm very happy with that. I know exactly what I need to work on. I did not feel like it was a particularly hard trial. Obviously it was, since there were only 2 titles, or everyone just failed.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes just weird things happen, and people get something funny stuck in their head that doesn't really have anything to do with the trial. Like you said, people are showing a lot of extra interest on that fire hydrant or something.
I was definitely part of it. So, I mean, my dog showed interest on the fire hydrant too, but I didn't call it. And I wonder how many people brought their dogs to the fire hydrant thinking this is going to be a hide.
And also just people are kind of subconsciously drawn to large, potentially bright, I don't know if it was bright red or yellow or anything, but objects like that in the search area draw us. And so even if we're not thinking about it, we're probably going to show more interest in it than other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So let's get right to some questions.
Hopefully you guys are hearing us a little better.
Yeah, and if you guys aren't hearing us, or if the video is really not working, hopefully the upload after the fact will better. But make sure you ask your questions anyways. Yeah, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can.
And hopefully next month at our new place we'll have better internet.
Yeah, well, suppose where we're moving, we'll actually have real internet compared to what we have here, which is some weird line of sight system that they have all out here in the desert. No normal internet companies will serve our house.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that should be really exciting because we can do a lot more live streaming than we're doing now.
Yeah.
So, first question. If your dog scarfs down a crumb he finds in a search area, is that a fault? And same on a second kind of similar topic. If a dog interacts with a toy distraction, is that a fault? And the answer to that is no, it's not a fault. It's a fault if the dog scoffed.
But not the scarfing part.
Not the scarfing part. The dropping part is a fault. If you let your dog eat a bunch of stuff off the floor, it could be a fault because that could be a safety hazard.
Yeah, I suppose depending on what venue you're trialing and how your judge feels about that. It also could just be it's not a fault. But in general, you eat something and there's not really anything you can do.
Yeah, it's not something I would fault. Now, if your dog destroys part of the search area, including a box, to get to a food distraction, or even if it's unintentionally, then but it's not the eating the food that's the problem. It's the destroying the search area that's the problem. And
oftentimes if there is a crumb for your dog to pick up, the judge didn't even know it was there.
Yeah.
Or it would already have gotten picked up.
You do need to be careful about your dog eating stuff in the search areas. Just be aware of that. Now, also keep in mind that your dog may be there may be crumbs because someone dropped food near a hide. So one thing I think is a problem is people who drag their dogs away from those crumbs. I'm not saying there is a hide there, but don't think there isn't a hide there and you should pull your dog away from it.
Yeah, and also be very careful about correcting when the dog's eating food in a search area because, like you said, they often are near a hide, and so you could be correcting your dog on odor.
Yeah.
But sometimes, I've just watched people just randomly drop food all over a search area. So don't become obsessed with that area thinking that there is a hide there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And then a follow-up question, are food distractors always in a container?
And a lot of these questions are directly addressed in rule books of various organizations because we don't know the rules for every organization. I know that in NACSW W3, if there are intentionally set food distractions, they will be in containers. At Elite, I'm pretty sure anything goes. The CO could do anything they wanted.
I think in general, they want to set things in such a way that they're not going to have to reset it for every dog because it's getting eaten.
Yeah. But if there was a way to stick a food distraction in a cupboard or something like that, I don't see why they might not do it. I mean, aside from people would be upset by their dog being tricked by that, but that's just a training issue.
Yeah, and when I read the question, I assumed that it meant would the food distraction itself be enclosed in a container like a Tupperware, which I would assume that a lot of the time it is, but you will have food distractions in elements other than containers, definitely in AKC at the higher levels. And like Michael said, probably anything goes in NACSW Elite.
And to me,
Summit.
I never think in those terms. I don't care about rule books. I always train to improve the skill of my dog, not to a rule book. So even if distractions would only be closed in containers and in container searches, that wouldn't affect the way I trained. I would still train my dog to ignore distractions out in the plain open in every element. I think.
Yeah, I've actually been working with groups of students a lot recently on intentional food distractors in interiors a lot, and other elements. I really like doing them in vehicles. I think they're really fun in vehicles. And I've been using you can get them like in the kitchen section at Target or something, like kids cups that would have a straw in them. And so there's a hole in the top. So they're very smelly, but it's also, the food's not just going to fall out, and you can stop your dog before they destroy it or get the food.
Yeah.
Those are a lot of fun.
They are.
And I think you can read your dog's behavior better with less bias than on containers. Yeah.
And eventually, if you're training at a very high level, you should definitely do blank searches with distractions. It shouldn't just be to distract against odor. It should also be distract against hunting and to proof your ability not to false.
So. Yeah, nose prints and
all kinds of yeah, exactly. So yeah, keep that in. That's my biggest opinion is train your dog to the highest possible standard, and if you do that, it won't matter what the rule book says. Your dog will always succeed. So yeah, knowing the faults. Another thing about faults in NACSW, faults don't disqualify you. They just affect your placement.
Unless you get more than 4.
Yeah, if you get 4 faults, yeah, that's true. If you get 4 faults, then you're disqualified. But
because in AKC, you can get infinite faults and still qualify as long as they're not disqualifying faults. So there's like a whole category where you could get 100 faults and still qualify.
Oh, wow. That would be a lot of faults. Yeah. But in general, if you're handling yourself with your mind on your dog's safety and being polite and careful with the environment that you're searching, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, there are nitpicky faults, and there are things like
start line faults.
Yeah. Cross your stinking start line.
Yeah.
Which are just a bit of a pain, but because people were making up their own start lines and people ruin it for everyone else. So
yes,
know your faults. It helps avoid headache, but don't obsess over them. I've gotten faults I knew I was getting. I knew I was where I let them happen, but my dog was working odor. So.
Yep. Next question. On a vehicle search, would the hide ever be placed inside the gas tank cover door? So again, your question doesn't explicitly say in a trial, but it has a flavor of in a trial. So ever? Well, would someone ever hide drugs inside of a gas tank? Yes. Okay, so there you go. So yeah, there could be hides there. In a sanctioned trial, you probably wouldn't see that until elite.
And I wonder if people worry about the odor of the gasoline emanating, or if that's going to be the case everywhere on a vehicle, so they wouldn't. I don't know.
I think one thing to remember, and I know the sport has changed a lot from the beginning, but that the sport was originally modeled after drugs and narcotics detection, which is there's needles and drugs and things on the floor.
It's definitely changed a bit.
Yeah, well, and so I think a lot of people are very nervous about this kind of stuff. There's a lot of comments going around about buried hides and whether we should be worried about the dog smelling toxins on the ground. It's like, look, they're a dog. Let them sniff the dirt. It's not they're not going to kill them. And the amount of exposure, like things. I wouldn't shove your dog into the gas tank of a car for an hour a day. Okay, that would probably be dumb. But the amount of exposure your dog's getting to a gas tank probably wouldn't hurt them. But yeah, absolutely. I've set hides in there. I've set hides deeper in cars.
Yeah, I've definitely set those in practice. My only caution would be, depending on your dog's height and enthusiasm, you may be really encouraging more jumping and scratching.
Yeah, which is true about all inaccessible hides.
Yeah, and vehicles, it's just more faults.
Yeah, so yeah, it's something I wouldn't set regularly for the reasons she just mentioned, but it is something I would set at some point, and that you may see. You'll see it at workshops. You'll see it probably in nationals and elite. You'll see it if you ever go to a canine noser camp. People like to do hides like that there.
In general, I don't want to leave things out unless they're really an issue. Like I'm not going to set a hide on the roof of the car because my dog probably will end up on the roof of the car, and I just don't want her learning that. Roof, yeah. So you have to know, the dogs you're working with and the kind of vehicle you're working too. If I'm working a golf cart, I may very well set things for my dog to climb inside because it's a golf cart and it's fun. Absolutely.
It is fun. And all these kinds of hides, like you should be exposing your dog to them primarily because they are fun. And it's the dog likes seeing new odor pictures. And
yeah, we have a student who for a while was just opening all the doors of her car and setting hides all over the inside. So it was really more like an interior than a vehicle.
And who cares that they don't do that in a trial?
Her and her dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Good confidence building and, problem solving and all that.
If anything, it makes the dog pay more attention to the car in ways that we'd want. It's almost like how when you first do boxes, you open the boxes and then progressively close them. Open the car up, let the dog search it, and then progressively close the doors. Then the dog would pay attention to the seams more because they know where the odor is going to escape better. So, yeah, definitely. Do it. It's going to be fun. Okay, let's see. At the start of my nosework journey, I was told to bring the dog to the vehicles and containers rather than starting them at the start line. As you suggested in your last review of our container search from CO Camp, this made sense as a way to help the novice dog know what they are to search. But I do not want my dog to be object focused. Rather, I want them to be odor obedient, or whatever the correct term is. If Ranger makes it off the wait list, if Ranger makes it off the wait list, I might be doing my first Elite trial in January. So since Elite has a mixture of elements, I'm surely not going to take Ranger up to the vehicles and or continue to start a search. Am I? Or am I totally misunderstanding something? I think there is always needs to be a balance between object focus and like what we would call free searching. I think you should train the dogs to be object focused at first because it makes sure that they're focused. And over time, you wean them off of this. Now, that said, where you start isn't only about object focus and free searching. It's about a lot of things. So I still might start my dog close to the vehicle.
It depends on what the search area is. I really think the way you start your dog is letting them know the most you can about what the search area is. So if there are vehicles at the beginning, you want to take them to the vehicles, or you've got containers over here, or you've got an exterior with a wall and you're going to start them on the wall and then work down. I'm pretty much picking a place to start my dog in almost every search area, and I try to pick something that maximizes the odor that they want my dog to be so container or vehicle focused that when they see those, they can't work anything else, or they assume that the odor is on the vehicle or in containers, and so it's it's on the ground near there, blowing over, and they insist that it's on the vehicle. I really don't want that to happen. But I do want to be able to give my dog as much information as possible and not waste, 30 seconds searching the ground before we get to the vehicle. And even you can have search parameters. So you could have just the containers are in play, or the containers are in play and then there's a line and then you have vehicles and then you have another line and then you have containers. I've seen that before. And so you never know what they're going to tell you. I've had just plain container searches in Elite. But I don't think it matters too much.
Yeah. I think also something that's worth mentioning is that your dog's object focus versus free searching is a result of your training, not where you start them at a trial. If your dog's object focused, starting the dog further away from the car, the only thing that's going to do is make sure that your dog is 30 feet ahead of you by the time you get to the car. So you're just setting yourself up to be too far behind the dog. So if you're worried about that, think about how you're setting your hides. That's pattern training, right? So pattern training is, if you watch my original pattern theory video, pattern training is teaching the dog which areas should be high priority and low priority. So if I point my dog into a search area and it has cars in it, my dog should see the cars as top priority. And when they don't find anything, they should expand out to the environment. For me, you can make your decision else otherwise, and then you have to achieve that goal by setting hides differently. So you'd have vehicles out, but set mostly the hides on the exterior. Whether or not that pays off as a strategy is seen in competition.
Yeah, and I think that you can have vehicles be high priority through NW3, and then as you're prepping for elite, say, okay, I need you to expand out now and set your hides differently, where there are more hides that are off the vehicles, and I want my dog to have odor priority above everything. So don't have container priority or vehicle priority if that's not what the odor is telling you to do. But that's a really difficult balance.
Yeah, I would have a little bit more balance on. I do want my dog to have vehicle and container priority. But that's because they're likely places that odor is going to be. And like she's saying, it is a balancing act. It's not like there's one or the other. It's you got to balance both.
Yeah.
I think if you had a hunting dog that was looking for birds, and that's an example I always like to use, it's stupid to say that the dog is bush focused, but he is, because that's where birds are likely to be, is in a bush. So he's going to go check bush to bush to bush to bush because he knows. But now if he's running from one bush to another and he catches one in the grass, he's going to still find the one in the grass.
Yeah, but I think the issue is that you see really clearly on vehicles themselves is that you'll see dogs get really hide savvy on vehicles, and they'll start checking wheel well and then wheel well and then license plate and skipping everything else on the vehicle.
Absolutely.
And that's completely a hide placement issue. Because we tend to set it where we can make it invisible, and those are the easiest places to do it. And those are also where they tend to have hides in trial. And so I think it's really important to pay attention in all of your elements to, are you teaching your dog to over focus on certain areas or skip areas? And the same thing with threshold training and teaching the dog that hides can be relatively close together. Anything that we do consistently is going to teach them something, and we just have to pay attention to what we're teaching.
And I think in general, people don't realize how consistently they are setting hides in the same places. I think one of the big mistakes I notice a lot of people make is they always make sure their hides are visually hidden, which I think is a complete waste of time. I think you should, I'm almost never visually hide my hides. They can just be sitting out in the open. The dogs almost never visually look for the hide. And the rare cases where the dog does, then I'll hide it for them. Or I'll set out decoy tins, which is even better for those dogs. But like set hides everywhere. If you really want your dog to be balanced, you just set hides everywhere.
Yeah.
And especially the places you wouldn't think to set them, which is hard because how do you think of something you can't think of?
Yeah, and that's when it's good if you have training partners or a class where you can have people rotate setting the hides or talking through where would you set hides in this search area to expand your own brain. I
had a challenge that I posted several months back of finding someone who doesn't know anything about nose work and having them set hides for you, because you'll learn a lot about what things you've been, not the correct word, but you've been indoctrinated with about where you're allowed to set hides and where you're not allowed to set hides. I remember it's so funny how you can watch someone who doesn't know how to do nose work set a hide, and you're almost in your brain thinking, no, that's wrong. You're not allowed to set a hide there. It's like, wait, why? Why aren't you allowed to set a hide? Are you sure you're not training your dog?
Yeah.
To set hides in certain places.
Another exercise that we did years ago, trip to a park, and we had everybody take turns, one round at a time, setting a hide. And the challenge was set whatever you think the easiest hide would be in this small search area that we gave them. And, so they all picked something different, and some of them were relatively easy and some of them were extremely difficult. And it was very eye-opening for everyone. Yeah. If you don't practice setting hides,
or especially setting hides with a criteria like that. Yeah. Like sometimes people just set hides, but then they don't think, well, what would I set if I want to set something extraordinarily easy? Setting the
something
easiest
that everybody
hide is hard.
Could get in 10 seconds. It's like impossible.
It's really hard, harder than you think it is. Just become an instructor and you'll figure out something. You set hides out. It's hard to set an easy hide. Okay.
All right.
Next question. So what do you suggest when you feel stuck in a training valley? That's a good question. And I have two main suggestions, and then I think I'll throw it over to Natalie, see what she says. But my main suggestion is sometimes it's a great thing to just take a break. And there are times where I've just been like, take a several month break and then come back to it refreshed.
Mhm.
That's the best thing you could do sometimes. Now, another thing you can do is do anything different.
Mhm.
So I study all sorts of things. I look at professional, different types of scent detection, arson dogs, diabetic dogs, drug dogs, bomb dogs, search and rescue, cadaver, that kind of thing, hunting dogs, barn hunt. And I look at that and I just try to see how is their hunting different than what I'm doing, and how can I incorporate some of that? How can I make my hunts, like just the other day in class, I had watched a hunting dog competition on YouTube, and I was like, oh, it's like nose work, but it's not. So I tried to figure out how can I emulate what those dogs were doing hunting in nose work class. So we did it. We set up a field trial for birds, but the birds were odor, and we set it with the same rules, and it was really fun. But just do something different. Get out of that rut and just find some way to make it different.
Yeah, and it depends on what your rut is. Is it just you're not seeing progress in your dog? Is it that you're not having as much fun as you were? I would try things like changing up your rewards. So is that more high value treats? Is it mixing it up where you've got 3 to 5 different treats on you that you're rotating between? Is it playing with a toy or a different toy, or just jazzing the dog up before we can getting kind of, those have their place too, and those can be fun and high energy. But I think that we forget that doing a one hide thing, and then having a big party and putting the dog away can be really good for them.
Yeah, that's another useful thing as well, is go back and start from the beginning. Now, I wouldn't go back all the way to food, but I would do everything I did with food, but with odor. Go back all the way to the beginning and rebuild your dog from scratch. I've done that with my dogs so many times, and especially like over the course of the years, my methods of starting dogs have changed, and just redoing my foundation with my dog from the very beginning, like they're a brand new dog, never done nose work before. Oh my gosh, it is the most fun thing I ever do with my dogs.
I think another thing can be finding a way to bring in your enthusiasm for hunting, so that if you're an enthusiastic hunting partner with them, that's going to change your searches. And then also sometimes interacting with your dog differently within the search. Like we've set things before, like this big pie corner, and set a hide way deep in there. And as your dog shows interest on this edge, come in and move something for them. They show interest over here, come in and move something. And I found those to be really, really energizing for the dog. Very drive building. And so that can sometimes help with training valleys.
Yeah. And another angle to this that you may or may not have meant, but maybe you're talking about training as a trainer, teaching other people, and you're in a rut with them. One of the things I would say is something that helps me is, what would I do if these weren't my clients' dogs? These are my dogs, and I want to train them today. What am I going to do with them? So what would I do if my dog was taking this class? And sometimes I'd bring a dog, and so I'd set something that I would do with my own dog, and sometimes those are the best classes. The other thing is, if you have students, just ask them, what do you want to do?
Yeah. Or like incorporate the hide setting in some way. It can refresh your brain and also teach them a lot more about odor.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know if that kind of helps you,
or if there was something completely different that you meant.
Yeah,
didn't answer at all.
Yeah. And I understand, like, training a dog usually is like this shape. So you make progress and then you get stuck, and then you
breaks, whether it's 2-week break. Those are,
absolutely.
We tend to take them regularly with our dogs. We used to do it on purpose, and now we do it because we don't have enough time.
Yeah. Hopefully the move will give us more time to train our own dogs.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you please discuss what you see as challenges transitioning from NW2 to NW3 for both the dog and handler? Also, are there any drills or games you recommend to help address the challenges? Thank you. So why don't you take this one first?
Okay. So I would say that the main increase in challenge from 2 to 3 is for the handler, because you don't know how many hides there are or if there are any hides. And that is just so much less information and more decision making that the handler has to make. So that's more stress. It's more fatigue from making those decisions. You have to pay a lot more attention to your dog as to whether they are saying there's anything else, and a lot more attention to your search area coverage and management, not, recovering the same line of boxes 5 times and you haven't covered the other area. And yeah, so it's huge to not know how many hides there are. For the dog, it's handler who now doesn't know how many hides there are, and it's keeping them in the search area twice as long as they would have because they don't know if they're done or not. So they have to be resilient to that and not false alert or shut down. So you definitely have to give the dog that experience, I think, so that they can handle it. What about you?
Oh, I agree with that. I don't think I've told people this. You can set an NW1 trial and just not tell the owner that, and you've got an NW3. It's no harder for the dog. It's only hard for the handler. So that's something that's worth thinking about, that if your dog passed their 2, your dog has all the skills they need for 3. There's no new skills they need to learn. They don't need to learn blank searches. Blank searches are a handler problem.
Not to mention, we usually do blank searches from pre-NW1.
Yeah, we do it before even ORT sometimes. But in terms of drills and games, the less you know, the better. Do things like that. And expose yourself to new things. So we're gonna start a game series. It's just taking time because we're moving right now. Where we'll post a bunch of our games. Just the more new things you do with your dog, the better. Go to workshops as much as you can. Go train in new places. That's the most important thing. If you want to know how to have a very highly competitive dog, the shortcut is train in new locations. That is it.
Yeah, and learn how to handle your handler stress.
Yep.
Your competition stress.
Absolutely. Competition stress is a killer. And so something I would recommend is find a situation outside of nose work to put some stress on yourself. So, for me, it's performing music in front of people or doing public speaking like I'm doing now, right? Videotape your searches. That is a great way to put some stress on yourself, especially if you send it in to someone like us to review it. That can be very nerve-wracking, but find some way to put pressure on yourself and do it.
And I also think just generally learning to read dogs in odor and out of odor makes a huge difference. Hazel and I had an elite trial last month where we did really, really well. And I had been at Colorado camp the week before, and then I sort of crunched in some training with her the week before the trial, but just, here's some hides. I know where they are. Let's just do them. Making sure that she was sourcing and all that. But I really think part of why we did well was that I had been at camp just watching a lot of dogs. And so my eyes were tuned up. And I think that makes a huge difference. So any chances you have to audit things or go watch trials, or even in your regular classes, really watching the dogs, not just sitting there watching, but, what odor changes of behavior am I seeing? The stutter step, head snaps, turns, subtle things, changes of, breathing. What is the handler doing? How is that influencing the dog? And just become really, really good at reading what you're seeing.
Yeah, and develop yourself as a handler. Get some practice handling other dogs other than your own. Start another dog in nose work. Grab your neighbor's dog who sits in the backyard all day. Take them to a nose work class and start them. You're going to learn so much from running that other dog that you're going to apply to your dog now. Or just borrow your friends in class. See anyone in your class who doesn't mind you running their dog. Take that opportunity, run them. Run your teacher's dogs if they let you. Not all teachers do, but my students are always welcome to run my dogs. And that includes learning how to handle dogs in other situations. So take some agility handling classes, take some obedience, like some like precision training classes. Develop yourself as a trainer and a handler. That's going to help you in nose work. Giving yourself this is where cross training and doing really helps. More skilled
Yeah.
as a handler.
Yeah, and increases your communication between you and your dog so that if you need to make a suggestion to them, you can.
So before we get to the questions outside of the list that we had pre-collected, let's do our giveaway.
Oh, why are we doing that first?
Because I like to do it in the middle of the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we have this cool mug, dog mug.
Is that backwards for them or only for
I
us?
don't know. So it says, I want to be the person my dog thinks I am. If you can't read it because it looks backwards. It's a cool dog mug. We're giving this away. The first person to post.
Except you can't have already won in the last two.
Okay. The first person to post hashtag NAMA in the comments of Patreon gets it. And we will do that.
We'll mail it to you.
Yes. So question first, which is, what sort of locations would you suggest for training interiors? One, the most easy to use are Home Depot, Lowe's, Tractor Supply, PetSmart. Those ones are pretty much always accessible.
Yeah, some of the like Lowe's and Home Depot are getting funnier about dogs, but maybe you can be a good ambassador.
Yeah, if you have a well-mannered dog. Also, Motel 6 is dog friendly. Save some money, go rent a room and do searches all day in it. You know?
Yeah, get a couple friends.
And I guarantee you those rooms are distracting. La Quinta is also dog friendly, and you know, maybe a couple of you go and pull your money together and rent a hotel room and do it. That's what I would recommend. Or have a group of friends that get together and you each go to each other's houses.
Yeah, one of our class locations, we have, I haven't counted the recent, something like 5 different locations, including most of those are different student houses.
Yes.
And that makes a huge difference in the dog's experience with working different sorts of interiors in particular. Yeah. And if you have any friends that are willing to just let you come over and set something, even if it's their garage or something that's not in their house. But a lot of people, if you're willing to ask, a lot of people are pretty willing.
Yeah. This is somewhere I would also recommend not cheating on your trainer, but going to other training classes just to get exposure to their training facilities. Yeah, you know, obviously with the blessing of the trainer you regularly train with, but going and training, I always tell my students, go and train with everyone you can, even if you don't respect them as a trainer, just to get to practice at their location. And one or two classes will do the trick. You know, that's really all you need.
Yeah, they get used to a new area pretty quickly.
They do. But you'll see the first time will be a nightmare.
Also, oh yes, if you have a reactive dog, that does make it more difficult.
Yeah, but Motel 6
areas or Motel 6.
Yeah.
And then if there's anyone putting on mock trials or fun events, there are a lot around here. I know not every area is as lucky as Southern California is with those sorts of events. Yeah, or convince your trainer to put one on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this question is, what would you suggest as a good motivational / recovery exercise after a trial? Would the running drill with open boxes paired be good? Any others? I'm thinking foundation type exercises paired. Like with my dogs, do out there, dogs you chuck down to some grass. Let's face it, thing more in food, just chasing, right?
Yeah, after the do is it. It was really hard to get the throw right, and if you don't get the throw right, you don't really get the benefit of the exercise.
Yeah, but that's my typical recovery. I tend to stay away from containers whenever I can.
I really like vehicles, so
yeah,
but it's like whatever element you get a lot of fun out of.
Yeah. I think the handler needs more recovery than the dog.
Yeah, and simple highs. And what I've found that if my dog needs to recover from anything from trials, it's that they're now fringing. And so I set things where we're just really working on sourcing.
I think the chair drill would be another one that would be worth doing, because in the trial, you overstepped your bounds sometimes to help the dog. And doing where you and don't help the dog, you sit in a chair and you don't move until the dogs put their nose on a tin. That kind of exercise could be really great and let the dog feel like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what it's supposed to be like. They're not supposed to help me at all.
Yeah, and in that case, I definitely would pair, especially
sure.
if your dog is or has gotten extra sticky to you as the handler.
Yeah,
You don't want to have to then get up and help them in order for them to be successful in the search.
absolutely. Let's see. I'm looking for more questions. Oh, that might be it.
Hope you all had a good Thanksgiving yesterday.
Yeah. Anybody do any fun Thanksgiving searches? Anybody planning on putting some turkey as a food distraction out?
It's a good one.
Or at the very least, use turkey as a reward.
Or stuffing. That would be a good food distraction.
Yes. Yeah. It's good food distraction for me.
All right. I guess that's it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you guys for tuning in. Next month, plan on having a much clearer live stream because we're going to have good internet. Fingers crossed. You know?
Did we get a winner for the mug?
I haven't seen anything yet. So if you're watching this retrospectively after it's live, you can still be the first person to post the hashtag NAMA and win the mug.
So we're having extra issues today with the stream.
Yeah. But thank you guys for tuning in. I look forward to talking to you